Is everyone here that's supposed to be here? Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and call this committee meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Good to see some real faces and real people. We have a short agenda today and a short amount of time, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting.
Motion to approve.
And is Ken with us? No, he's not with us. Okay. All right. And so the first item, Dr. Shari Bax is going to talk to us about the COVID-19 update. And where'd he go? Yes.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
And glad you all could be here for this somewhat rainy day. You will recall that in January, you received an update from the provost concerning particularly academics and how the faculty and students have navigated COVID-19 through the last year as regard to academics. So this month, I thought it would be appropriate to give you some information, particularly with regards to the student experience and how we have navigated COVID-19 with regards to the student experience. And so we've tried to hit the highlights for that. I will tell you that there was no way we were going to put everything that has occurred in the last year into a document that you would read, because I have no idea how long that document would be. But we did try to hit most of the highlights with particular attention given to the fact that the university started its planning very early. I don't think a lot of people recognize that last January we had staff members that were already talking about what are we going to do if, and what safeguards do we need to put in place now, and what do we need to do to prepare should this virus come to the United States and to Missouri and to the University of Central Missouri. So we gave you some of the things that were done for planning, how we initially responded last spring when the decision was made that we were going to go virtual, and then what preparations were made to return to operations for this academic year. And so we've given you some of those highlights. I asked Dr. Bowman to join me today for this because he has been very, very instrumental in many, many of these pieces. And he is my fellow EOC manager. The Emergency Operations Center was activated last spring when it became clear that the university was going to need to take concerted action to respond to the pandemic. And so he and I together helped coordinate that group in making recommendations to the president concerning the university's response. And then he has also, throughout this academic year, chaired the COVID-19 task force that meets every week to consider what revisions need to be made to our standing protocols, constantly looking at our case numbers. He helped design the dashboard that we use to track all those numbers, and is the one that regularly coordinates with integrated marketing and communications for the weekly website dashboard. So I wanted to make sure he was here because he has been such a key player in all of this. I will also note that there are certain areas that are named within this document, but this has been a university-wide effort. I do not think there is a single unit on this campus that has not somehow contributed to this university's COVID-19 response. I mean, it's been an all hands on deck all the time. Everything from certainly custodial has been a very, very key part of our response. We had to figure out what to do with mailroom distribution when we were virtual. All of those, I mean, every single piece of this university had to figure out how its operations were going to be sustained during all of this. And there was no way to capture that in this document. So I want to make sure to point that out. I don't want to go through and read this document to you, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have about it, or any questions you have in general about the how we've handled the student experience. I would also note what we do not provide here is some of our future planning, which we are doing. Every single week we talk about what's next, and we are currently in the process of figuring out what the next academic year looks like, and forming recommendations to take to the president about the next academic year. We are constantly watching the Center for Disease Control guidance, because it's constantly changing, to figure out what that means as far as our current protocols on campus. And with the vaccine, we are currently in the process of making arrangements for vaccination clinics to occur on this campus. We actually already have announced the one for employees to occur on April 9th. And as of yesterday, we were notified that we have the preliminary components in place for a student vaccine clinic to be offered the following week. So we are definitely planning all of that out and getting prepared for that.
That was my question. Thank you.
Mary, can I just
Sure,
make a comment?
yes.
I just would like to thank all of you for your hard work that you did on this, and I know you were making decisions on the fly, and of course there was no direction book to this, and I think we did a really good job managing our student issues and that kind of thing, and so I just want to commend you all on that and appreciate your hard work. I did want to say before you got away from the table, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Bax for receiving the Excellence in Governance Award that she received yesterday or the day before. And she joins a prestigious group to receive that award, and I just wanted to, in this meeting, congratulate her on that, and I had the privilege of attending that, so I just wanted to mention that while she was here at the table front and center.
Thank you, Governor Abbey.
How has the student response been, overall? And then also, you haven't announced anything for the student vaccination yet. I didn't know if there was any response to that.
We have not announced the student vaccination event yet. We were getting confirmation of that late yesterday, so it will be getting announced very shortly. But we need just to make sure that all the pieces are in place before that announcement goes out, and they'll have the opportunity to register for that and such. And your general question about student response in general. I think everyone that has, every university has experienced that the student response has been mixed, just like the faculty and staff response has been mixed. I would say that I have been extremely impressed by our students' perseverance and their commitment to their academic success. They have really tried to find ways to be successful in a very, very difficult environment. The university has really tried to make it less difficult for them, but this is so different than any of us have ever experienced. And our students should really be credited with remaining committed to pursuing their academic programs and making the best that they possibly can. The provost with the Student Government Association last semester did a forum, both face-to-face and virtually, to collect student feedback about the academic experience. And the students were very forthcoming about what they saw as the strengths and weaknesses. And so they have helped provide us information by which we could improve what's available to them. We did the same thing, and this is noted in here. We did a survey with those students that were quarantined and isolated on campus, so that we could get information about what their experience was like and what they would like to see us change about that experience. And then we did make some changes and enhance some services based on the feedback that we got from that. So the students have been very forthcoming with us about what needed to change, But I would say the overall culture of the students has been, we need to get through it, and in the process, get an academic degree completed. So I really admire that about them. I don't know how I would have dealt with this when I was in college. I mean, it's a lot.
It's
So,
been a real challenge for students and also for faculty. I just think faculty
oh, absolutely.
Has been working very hard to make this work for the students and give them time to adjust and things. I know they've been working on that.
And I think it's important to note that our students are very diverse. I mean, we have students that they could have gone in and basically created the online class for their faculty member because they are so adept at using those tools. And then we have other students that are very, very, very uncomfortable with online learning and the online tools and don't have smartphones and such. And, you know, it's just like our faculty and our staff, our students are extremely diverse in those things, and they have very diverse learning styles and engage in activities for a variety of reasons. So.
Well, the bulk of the students I talk to, they want to be on campus. I mean, there's no question about that. They would rather be on site, and even if they're doing a hybrid type thing, they would rather be here. And so I think that's great. We were able to stay open when we opened back up. We were able to open the fall and get the students back on campus to give them a better learning experience. So I think that was one of the bright spots I really saw with our whole project with that. So
yes, definitely. We have students that will be much more academically successful when they are in face-to-face learning environments than when they're virtual, and they'll be much more engaged in activities and other things that contribute to their overall learning if they're able to be here face-to-face. We have other students, though, that due to their own levels of comfort and their own medical backgrounds and everything, they absolutely needed to be able to continue to access the campus virtually. And so I really appreciate the work that both the faculty and the staff put into making it so that we had a diversity of approaches to our students. Even back to last spring, where a lot of campuses around the country, when they decided to close their doors, they closed their doors. Students were sent home. They were not given an option. They were sent home and told not to come back. And in some instances, I actually have a family friend whose daughter wasn't even allowed to go back and get her stuff. That was it. Whereas our campus recognized the fact that we have students that have nowhere else to go. And we needed to continue to provide housing. We needed to continue to provide access to dining. We needed to continue to provide access to certain services on campus, that this was the only way that they were going to have Wi-Fi so that they could engage in their academics virtually, and our campus figured out a way to make that happen.
When you start offering the vaccine to students, will that won't just be students that live on campus, it will also be students that live off campus?
No, actually, one of the main reasons for us to offer the vaccine on campus, certainly for our on-campus residents, and certainly just because it's generally good for the student body. But currently, I learned this yesterday in one of those phone calls with the Missouri Department of Higher Ed and Workforce Development. The current protocols for the vaccine in the state of Missouri are, for the most part, most sites that are doing vaccine clinics, they are being instructed to only provide that vaccine to Missouri residents. So if our students are out-of-state residents or international students, they would not be eligible to get vaccinated in those clinics. However, within the state's protocols is an exception for campus-sponsored or campus-hosted clinics. And so our clinic will be publicized out to all students, and all students that want to get the vaccine will be encouraged to register for it, regardless of whether they're on campus, regardless of whether they are Missouri residents, out-of-state residents, international students. It'll be for all students.
Just to echo Governor Abney's words earlier, I want to congratulate you on your SGA Excellence in Governance Award. I've been fortunate enough to see firsthand your work with students over the years, and it's nothing short of tremendous, and I applaud you not only on your effort and your office's work this year, but over the years working with students. And then also in response to Governor Danduran's comments earlier about the student experience this year, I really want to applaud everyone on Dr. Bowman's EOC, but also everyone in your office, because as a student, I was very impressed by the regular communication and how up to date the students were kept. in regards to everything going on and the drastic number of changes that occurred in the past year. And without that regular communication, I'd be lost academically, as well as so many other ways. And I just really appreciate your effort, and I know so many students do, and that was a key piece in maintaining students' academic success. And I think that's a key reason that as to why our retention levels have been at almost record highs over the past few reports we've seen. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I will say that Integrated Marketing and Communications has been an amazing partner with us for all of this.
Just one last note, please. I know it wasn't just the two of you, and you know that, so please express to all of your staff that all of us as board members appreciate all the work they've done to keep us in a good light within the community, within the educational system, and things. We really appreciate everything, and I'm grateful for the success of our students. Are there any other questions or comments? And we'll take time and look over this report. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item, oops, I went to sleep here, is our, and who do you have coming here today?
I have invited Dominique Hampton, who is the graduate assistant for the Center for Multiculturalism and Inclusivity, to join me today. Dr. Chancellor, who is the director, was not able to be here. But we are very fortunate to have Domino here, and in just a minute I'm going to ask him to tell you a little bit about his experience with the center as an undergraduate student, because he did receive his undergraduate degree from UCM and was actually one of our Charno finalists. And then he can also tell you a little bit about his work as the graduate assistant. I wanted to give you this update because I don't think we've actually come in and told you much about the Center for Multiculturalism and Inclusivity. And you'll recall that not last month, in January, during the mini retreat, I mentioned the Center for Multiculturalism and Inclusivity as a key piece of things that we're doing as we look forward. And so I wanted to just give you some basic background and information about the center and what it's doing. So the center has been around now for several years. And I gave the mission statement for the center was designed in, I think it was 2016. And it's dedicated to enhancing the experiences of underrepresented student populations on UCM's campus. In addition, we strive to educate all students, faculty, staff, community members to help promote a campus-wide culture of respect, understanding, and inclusion. They do maintain social media and regularly put out information about the events that they're doing on their social media, as well as just pieces to make people think about different things that are going on in the national landscape, different remembrances that are happening and such, as one way to connect. As I mentioned, the center has two staff members. The director is Dr. Lover Chancellor. She is also an assistant professor of child and family development and teaches classes that are very much related to the purpose of the center. And then as of this year, Dominique joined us as the graduate assistant. And so would you just take a few minutes to introduce yourself and your background with the center as an undergraduate and some of what you do now as a graduate assistant?
Okay. So, my name is Dominique Hampton. I go by Damo. I arrived at UCM in 2016 as a freshman, and I really wasn't active within the center until about my junior year of college. I was a college wrestler during my undergrad experience, and so that took up a large majority of my time. But once I kind of understood how to balance between athletics and academics, and as well as a social life, I started to become more active in the community. I joined the fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and that kind of put me out there, a broader network of students of likeness. And so the center has really been the central hub where African American students and minorities as well can kind of come and hang out and be themselves Warrensburg is a smaller rural area compared to those major cities like St. Louis or Kansas City or Chicago and Memphis, where many of our minority students often come from. And so that center is that, like I said, that central hub where students can just hang out, play games, listen to music, study, and just relax in between, class period. As well as, our previous graduate assistant, Jay Todd, he hosted, many events, talks, workshops that can help educate and uplift students in the community. My work now as a graduate assistant, I kind of continue to do the same thing. I like to throw a lot of events, and so just this past year, we hosted a Black Lives Matter march and rally to speak on some of the things that happened in 2020 over the summer with George Floyd. We provided a educational workshop to kind of give students an upper hand on how to succeed academically in college, as well as we plan to do some financial literacy workshops and mental health seminars as well, because due to COVID, mental health problems has risen for students. Not being able to connect with students physically and being online, isolation just kind of stems that environment. And so we've been doing a lot of things such as that, as well as kind of being this in-between center for like financial assistance, academic assistance, mental health, and being that guidance counselor for students that they can come to, being a graduate assistant and being an undergrad at the university. I've built a lot of friendships and personal connections with the students that we target. And so oftentimes students will feel comfortable coming to me to ask for guidance or clarification on what they need to help them have a successful academic and college journey. So that's a little bit.
So the center, first and foremost, works directly with students. As Damo mentioned, it provides a space where they just feel comfortable coming to hang out and study and gather. They receive mentoring, advocacy, and ombudsman there. We have lots of students that seek out Dr. Chancellor and Damo just to help navigate different processes here at the university. They support the different multicultural registered student organizations that we have on campus. Those organizations can use the center for their programs and activities. They have other resources up there that they can make available to those organizations to help them in offering their programs and activities. And they also encourage coordination between those different groups for programming and such. They create connections and cross-collaboration across those groups, and they help those groups connect and those individuals connect with different offices on campus. One of the most common things that happens at the center is students will come in to talk to Dr. Chancellor, and they really just need to know who on campus to talk to about a specific issue or problem that they've encountered. And so she or Damo help connect them with that particular office so that they can get their problem resolved. And then they also work directly with the Central Summer Academy that we have here in the summer, which brings incoming prospective students in for an additional transitional experience during which they're earning college credit to help them get a foot ahead in their college experience. They offer lots of programs in the center. In fact, they've got a program going on right now with a focus on homelessness, where they're just trying to bring attention to homelessness, and they're raising resources for to address homelessness and such. They have the primary responsibility for coordinating our Martin Luther King Jr. Remembrance and Recognition. Each year, they work with the committee that plans our Trading Moon Powwow and Native American Arts Festival each year, and they do activities every single month for different recognitions and celebrations of different heritages and such, and they have displays up in the center, constantly changing displays up in the center as part of those celebrations. And Dr. Chancellor is currently working with 2 other faculty members from other universities on a diversity training, which is really about creating a culture of inclusivity, and it's called We All Have a Part to Play, a holistic approach to creating a culture of equity and inclusivity, and that will be being brought to the university for a training opportunity. They also work with faculty and staff They have offered numerous trainings to different offices and academic programs. They've collaborated with the missions on how to offer specialized visit days and recruitment efforts and involve current students of underrepresented groups in those visit days and recruitment efforts so that visiting students will see we really do have a place for them here because we currently have students that have similar backgrounds to them here. And so they've worked with the missions about that. They help get the word out to the students that they work directly with about other opportunities across campus that are being offered by offices, including student employment opportunities. And Dr. Chancellor is going to be serving on the President's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion that he has just recently created. And then they also work beyond the campus. Dr. Chancellor and Damo both worked with the University of Kansas's Gear Up program. This program targets sophomores and juniors in high school in helping them get prepared for college. And they were the ones that offered the diversity workshops for that program. And all of that was tagged with University of Central Missouri Center for Multiculturalism and Inclusivity so that those students would know about the University of Central Missouri and that we have a Center for Multiculturalism and Inclusivity on this campus. Dr. Chancellor represents the university on the St. Louis Talent Hub. They have worked a lot with youth excited about sports right here in Warrensburg on some future planning opportunities. And Dr. Chancellor works with the Whiteman Air Force Base African American Heritage Association also. So lots of different forms of outreach both on campus and off campus. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or more importantly, he can answer questions about the center and its operations and its work with students.
Donald, when we approved this concept several years ago, there was concern students may not know where it was or location. Is there any problems or anybody commented to you that they don't know where you are or the space isn't big enough or anything like that? There were some of the concerns way before you were a part of it.
So, yeah, we've been meeting with integrated marketing to kind of figure out a way that we can get some more exposure. We are located in a area where students often don't go up. We had different languages on our staircases that kind of pointed to that direction, but that's now been removed. And so as of right now, we don't have any form of marketing, signage, or anything aside from above where most students aren't looking up as they walk through the union. And so other than that, we don't have anything that kind of points to that direction. And so we're still trying to work on getting that situated.
And I'll say that I hope some of that will be addressed in the very near future because the entire university union is supposed to be getting new signage. So.
Thank you.
Dom, I don't know if you can answer this question. It might be more for either Dr. Bax or Dr. Best, but do you know the status, or have you had any experience with the President's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion?
So I've heard about it. I actually thought about participating as a graduate member of that, but seeing as Dr. Chancellor was already a part of that commission, and I'm her graduate assistant, that I could, work with her on things that, that committee may need. And so I don't know too much about it outside of the general information, but yeah, I've heard about it.
Okay.
I can tell you that the individuals for that commission have been selected. That commission is in place, and that commission has already met and started having conversations.
Okay. Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing them progress throughout the next few years as they work through this.
I am glad to hear they're involved in student recruitment and on-campus visits, if we're able to have those again now. I'm not sure if we are, but it's nice to let people know that the students we're recruiting, that we have this available to them. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
And I just want to say, I also appreciate the fact that there's the outreach to the community. I live here in Warrensburg, so I think it's important that we do reach out to this community where our students are on a day-to-day basis. I appreciate that.
I would like to ask you, the Career Development Division is also in your area, correct?
Not anymore.
Not in, okay. Because I was just wondering, how would this group interact with the Career Development
And
area?
they do. Actually, the center co-hosted with the Career Services Center a career, I'm not sure what we called it, but it was basically a career fair opportunity where companies that were particularly interested in doing diversity recruitment participated in that event, and then the center helped publicize it. And it provided an opportunity to really highlight companies that really want to engage in diversity recruitment.
And I raised that question because a comment that he made regarding students feeling comfortable coming to him, I think that's what he said. And I know I've had some concern about the diversity in the career development department.
Dr. Chancellor started that conversation with Career Services to start planning some of those events 2 years ago, I think. So we did, I think last August was the first time that we hosted one of those. So, and they also work with the, I'm not going to get the name of the program correct, the campus, the program that provides business clothes for students to make sure that they have them for interviews and such. And so they've worked with that program too.
If there's no other comments, I appreciate you bringing these offices and highlighting these types of things to us because we don't know about them unless you do so. And so I really appreciate it when you bring, and I'm looking forward to more this year as we open up a little bit more like we did 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So thank you very much, both of you, for coming. Any other comments? Thank you. And do we have anything, Dr. Bax, for the agenda for
Not that has
meeting?
been identified yet.
Okay.
I'll have some conversation with Dr. Best to see if maybe we want to do another presentation like this just to make
Okay.
you aware of something.
Thank you. And if,
I have a question if you're down to other.
mhm,
Are you down to other on your agenda?
yeah.
Okay. Students, let's say 8 or 9 o'clock at night, what kind of transportation opportunities do students have here for getting back and forth to places?
Well, and I guess it kind of depends on what the places are, but we do have.
Okay, let me just say Walgreens.
Okay, and I need to double check if Walgreens is on the night rider route. I know Walmart is on the night rider route. We do have a transportation service that is actually provided through the student activity fees called Night Rider. It's the actual service is provided by a local transportation company that is contracted to do it, but they have a regular route and regular pickup and drop-off times, including the evenings, that runs. There, and then of course there's a local taxi service that will take students back and forth. But we do have the Night Rider, and those routes, I believe Student Government Association reviewed those routes and time slots and such last academic year. And
And the
that's,
reason why I asked the question, a parent called me about 8 o'clock at night, said the daughter was at Walgreens getting medication and there wasn't Uber service or some kind of service to get back to where she needed to go, and I just wondered if there was some kind of number they can call if they need transportation. They eventually found someone to pick her up at Walgreens to take her back to, she didn't live on campus.
okay. And see, that's where we run
Yeah.
into difficulties. If they don't if they don't live on campus, or they're not being picked up from or returned to campus, then it wouldn't fall within the university transportation plans. But we can help students know what public transportation is available, because we do have a local taxi company that drives all over town.
But that student, if they were at Walgreens and wanted to get to a safe place, they could get onto campus
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
campus security.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's something that
We're not-
everybody needs to know.
Yeah, they're not asked to tell us where their residency is. They can come back to campus. And we have students that do that live like close to campus, but then use the transportation to get back to campus and then just walk to their adjacent apartment.
Anything else? Anyone else? That's a good question, Mary. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
I think we're going to take a couple minutes before we start the next committee meeting to adjust a couple microphones.
sir.
Call the Academic Affairs Committee meeting to order. The first item we have on the agenda is approval of the minutes. And I do have a correction that I would like to eventually ask for, but I guess I could have that with discussion. So may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Any discussion? And my discussion would be, it was a statement that regarding the charter school and, let me pull that up right quick. It indicated that I said, Dr. Long acknowledged all students deserve a quality education and felt as a charter school sponsor, UCM is working toward that goal with Hope Leadership Academy. And I think what I intended to say, if I wasn't heard correctly, is that that's what I was charging the group to do, and to work toward a goal, of success, for the school. And so I just asked for that to be restated in some fashion.
Sure, we'll correct that, and we'll send that back out to the committee.
Okay. Any other corrections, or if not, I would like to ask that the minutes be approved as corrected. Second? Okay. All right, we will file the minutes away. Okay, the next item on the agenda would be, I believe it's Emeritus Status, and I'd like to call Dr. Bridgman to make that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Long, members of the board. Agenda item 2, tab 4, is a request to consider Emeritus Status for Ms. Michelle Mewen, Office Professional 3 in the School of Business Administration, Business Strategy. Mr. Carl Irvin, Electrician 1 in Facilities General Maintenance. Ms. Karen O'Keefe, Membership Services Specialist, KMOS TV. Ms. Joyce Huffman, Outreach Coordinator in Extended Campus General Operations. Mr. David Card, Chief Flight Instructor in the School of Aviation. Ms. Mewen retired January 31st. Mr. Irvin, Ms. O'Keefe, Ms. Huffman, and Mr. Card will retire March 31st, 2021. All qualify for Emeritus Status in accordance with the Board of Governors policy, and we recommend their approval.
Are there any concerns regarding this recommendation? If not, I would like it, we could have consensus to move this to the consent agenda for approval. Do we have consensus of the group? Thank you.
For agenda item 3, tab 16, I would like to call on our General Counsel, Ms. Lindsay Chapman, for presentation.
Thank you. So yes, agenda item 3 is amendments to Board of Governors Policy 2.2.040, which is the faculty classifications. And if you'll recall, a few years ago, well, actually for quite some time, the university has been working towards development of a promotional track for our instructional faculty. And since faculty classifications are set forth by the Board of Governors 3 years ago, this policy was updated to include some different titles for instructional track faculty. And the provost and president charged a task force with working towards some recommendations regarding how to implement such a promotional track. And that task force and the faculty, both tenure track, tenured, and instructional, have done a lot of work in that regard in making proposals to the provost and the president regarding how that might be implemented. That work also revealed 2 things that need board approval. One is that, as set forth in the briefing paper, a category called visiting professor, visiting faculty, so visiting assistant professor, visiting associate professor, or visiting professor would be beneficial to the university as set forth in the briefing paper. And also the original titles for instructor included the highest rank as being simply instructor, but the task force has indicated that they would prefer that to instead be senior instructor, which would be a change requiring board approval. So I would be happy to answer any questions of the board, as would Dr. Bridgman, if the board has any. Otherwise, we recommend that these are approved. I do have one change to make to the red line. I apologize, there is an error. The red line to the policy in section B, visiting faculty, the final paragraph, the first sentence says, if a visiting faculty member at the university becomes a successful candidate for a tenure track position, that person may request the provost consider his or her time in the instructional faculty position as prior service. That should say in the visiting faculty position as prior service. So that's just a typo that needed to be corrected, but I would ask you to approve with that in mind.
I had a question on that, it doesn't seem that long ago we had concerns about different titles and how things, this is not in, this works along in that same line as the name change?
So if you'll note, thank you for bringing that up. The task force in moving forward with a promotional track discovered that we did have around 40 faculty on campus that were instructors but had other titles aside from instructor, and recognizing that some of them would like to keep that, there is a grandfathering in provision that's proposed here that would give those faculty the option upon their next renewal to keep that title, but if they do, they would not be eligible for promotion under this track. So it's an option for them to take the new title that's offered to them and be eligible for promotion under the criteria approved by the provost, or they get to keep that. But this policy change makes clear that going forward, any new hires must be consistent with the title set forth by this policy.
What advantages do they see regarding keeping the old titles?
You know, as someone who negotiates things, it's and I don't negotiate faculty hires, but just negotiating general business arrangements. Some people put more emphasis on titles than others, and some people really care about that a lot, and they like the title that they negotiated at the time they were hired or at the time they were put in their current position.
Okay. Any more discussion on that? If not, I could have consensus to move it to the consensus agenda. Thank you. Okay, next item, Dr. Bridgman.
Agenda item 4, tab 12, is a briefing paper regarding recent curricular modifications that were approved by President Best under the board policy that delegates authority to him to approve certain curricular matters. And so this briefing paper is provided for you to see that curricular work is ongoing. That is, we're looking at deleting and modifying as well as creating new curriculum throughout the academic year. And this particular briefing paper notes a number of areas that deleted options or actually put programs in abeyance. And we wanted to provide that for you so that you could see that ongoing work and approvals made by the president relative to things we are removing from our course offerings.
Any questions from the committee regarding those changes? I guess the only thing I was wondering, I know some of them for alignment changes and so forth, and I was just wondering, as we go through this process, how rigorous is it to make sure we have that alignment up front?
So curriculum, of course, is driven by our faculty, and so the rigor is ensured in that at the school level, program level, college level, and even at the university level, we have curriculum committees and a process that reviews those and then ultimately approves them through my office. New things, of course, come here where the board has final approval before we send things to MDHEWD. We rely heavily on the faculty for their expertise as they are both delivering the courses as well as assessing them. And so one of them, an additional way, is through our assessment process, where they're looking at disciplinary standards and accreditation standards where disciplines have those. And the role of the chair and the dean is to ensure that. Ultimately, academic rigor and alignment falls to me. And so all of those different processes and steps and through shared governance, working on that together is how we at least would put forward, we make sure we're in aligned and delivering the kind of curriculum that we can be proud of.
Any questions?
I have a question, just I guess a concern. Most of these, there's other pathways or it doesn't qualify, but with the aviation, it's in abeyance, and it says because of low enrollment. And are we doing anything to try and, I think aviation is a strong program for us, and I hate to see that happen there. Are we doing anything to promote that program so it's out of abeyance and we get the students back in?
So there are a number of different degrees in that particular area, and the faculty have put this one forward because of the low enrollment. One of the things we're doing is through our retrenchment process, identified aviation as a Category 1 program, that is to receive consideration for more investment. I agree with you. I think that is a unique signature program for us. And the remaining degrees, I think, are all strong. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also continue to focus on recruitment. The chair over there is new to this year, and I know that he has had a focus on building relationships and growing these programs. He and I have talked recently about some MOUs and partnerships to diversify enrollment with international students. And then we recently received notice from the Air Force that our program, aviation program, will be part of their junior academy that they use as their primary program to help diversify the ranks of pilots in the future of the Air Force. So with that new leadership, with that focus on it being a signature program, I believe that we will not see future degrees in aviation brought forward for abeyance due to enrollment or lack of leadership where there may have been in the past.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Governor Dandrian, can I add something here?
Mm-hmm.
So this aviation maintenance management program was actually created basically as an articulation transfer agreement with State Tech, and we used to have an A&P program, and we basically transferred all of our assets to State Tech for that program because it's really more of a 2-year program. And on top of that, we added this management type certification through a 4-year degree process. We've gotten very few transfer students. We signed that agreement in 2011. And so over the 10-year period, we've gotten very few transfer students from them. I did have a conversation with Sean, the president of State Tech, and his provost as well. They had no concerns at all about this particular program being put into abeyance. And they actually expressed some interest in working with us in other ways, but for this particular program, there were no concerns they had from their faculty or from the administration for us to put this in abeyance, given the specialized nature of the program and the lack of interest that they had seen in their students and our own enrollment. But the remainder of the programs that we have are actually very strong programs, and we foresee them not only continuing, but getting even better.
Thank you.
One of the questions I relate to that somewhat. I know my history on this committee has been that when programs are brought to us, it is indicated that, there's enrollment waiting to get into the program. And I noticed through some of these reviews, we have seen programs that have never enrolled students. So I guess I'm wondering for the future, when we develop these programs, it was my understanding that we would develop them based on need, and that there is enrollment that can be enhanced, but you're starting out with something and not zero. And so I was just wondering if in the future that we can be assured that when we approve these programs that there is enrollment waiting, to enter these programs.
Yes, Dr. Long. If anything, the retrenchment process has done for us is it's caused our programs to take a deep introspective look at their enrollments related to their degree programs. Here in year 2, I've been working with Dr. Toms, and she and I are looking at a number of curricular changes to address that very issue. including more robust and rigorous analysis on the demand for a particular degree program or option, and being able to document that more thoroughly and fully. From my own perspective, I will share with the committee that I believe curriculum, that is the majors and programs we offer, are the most important aspect of our work. Students come here to get degrees to then leave and go do well and contribute to their communities and professions. And our curricular process can be stronger in that regard as we consider new programs, and we will do that.
Thank you. Okay, do we have other questions? This is an information item, and if it's consensus of the committee, we can move it forward as an information item. Okay. Next item.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, tab 13, is an information item as well, and it is a list of our faculty who received promotion and or tenure during our most recent cycle, and you can see them listed there in the briefing paper.
Any questions regarding?
It's not really, it's just, speaking of retrenchment, just because somebody qualifies for tenure or promotion doesn't make them exempt from the retrenchment.
That is correct. They're two separate processes.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everybody understood that. Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
very much.
If there are no concerns or questions, we'll move it to the information item
Thank you,
for the
Dr.
consent
Long.
agenda.
We now turn our attention to agenda item 6, tab 14, an enrollment update. And joining me is Dr. Langston to provide that.
Thank you, Provost Bridgman, and good morning, Governor Long, members of the board. Today, we're going to go through where we are on enrollment for this spring, and then give you a preview of where we stand for this upcoming fall as well. Some of the key takeaways we'll be talking about today. Certainly, no surprise to see this continues to be a very difficult recruiting environment due to COVID-19 and enrollment losses across the board, not just here, but across the nation as well, have been impacted our spring, first impacted fall 2020 and now spring 2021. They are linked, both semesters, so when we see declines, they are precipitated first by the fall, and then they cascade into the spring. However, there is some good news. Overall spring enrollment outperformed fall enrollment. That being the fall to fall, we were down enrollment by 10.5%, where spring to spring now our enrollment is down 6.6%, so there is some improvement on that. I'm also going to be sharing quite a few fall 2021 enrollment trends that are trending positive for undergraduate and international students in particular. Nationally, it's no surprise that the COVID pandemic has affected enrollment for all universities, public, private, community college, and such. Nationwide, the losses in total enrollment average about 4.5% for colleges and for the four-year area. The community college scene is not much better. Statewide, two-year institution headcount for community colleges is down 15% in the past 3 years, 19.3% in the past 5 years. So when we're trying to look to recruit transfer students, this is what we're having to deal with at this point. State Fair, for example, is down 8.3% in 2020 versus 2019, 17.9% over the past 3 years, and 20.3% over the past 5 years. Metro and KC is down 17% in enrollment, 22% over the past 3 years, and 26% over the past 5 years. So it is a very difficult environment, to say the least. However, I promise we're not just resting on that. We have been very aggressive, and I'll be sharing some information as we go. Again, the overall, nationally, the decline in enrollment has been about 4.5%. A little more precipitous here at 7.47%. But again, this has to also do with how we performed in fall. As you can see, there's two metrics there. Headcount and credit hours both are down, with headcount down from 11,415 to 10,562. Of course, you would expect credit hour to decline as well in there. So that's where we're dealing with right now for spring census. Undergraduate enrollment in particular, and again, we can't expect undergraduate enrollment to be up or even level because for this spring, because we had a decline in the fall. So it kind of cascades down on there. So as you see, we do not receive many first-time degree-seeking students in the spring. That's just not a population that we typically receive, usually in the fall. So we did go up a little bit on that. Sophomore population here, all the populations declined. Juniors a little less so. And the other number I draw your attention to is dual credit. With schools being virtual and such, normally we'd add another 200 students to this, but as you can see, that's and that of course sways all the numbers that we're talking about here for spring as well. So we anticipate that number to bounce back this upcoming year as schools, high schools, open up, hopefully following the vaccination regime. Undergraduate enrollment, you all can read through all this. I do want to make one point on there, and that's the last one, the international number. Again, heavily influenced by COVID. Many of our embassies are closed across the globe, and hence our number is down. That's another 70 or so students. So we should be normally in another 270 students if we were in a non-COVID year. So, and again, those numbers impact all of our other numbers for the spring as we're talking through here. International graduate and transfer enrollment. Overall new international enrollment, now this includes some of our graduate students there, but new international student enrollment was up 3.05, which is encouraging, while the total international student enrollment declined by 13.78%. I will say that the 834 number, we felt that we could improve upon that pre-COVID times, and normally that would be an improvement. I think once we talk about what we're looking at for this fall and summer, it is a significant change in what we're looking at in terms of the negative numbers. I'll share that here shortly. Census date for graduate student enrollment, we're up about 1% in graduate. Overall, we're up 2.75%. So even with the COVID downturn, we're still looking very good for graduate enrollment. And then, of course, there's your new transfer numbers. We were down from 288 to 265, about a 7.9 or 8% decline. But it's again we're dealing with what the community colleges are dealing with. So it falls to us when we're dealing with this. One of the things that we have not compromised on is academic integrity. The average GPA, I will share, even during these difficult times, we have not lowered any of that. We're still remaining at a 2.95, which is actually up from spring of 19 when we were at 2.82. So we're not doing that to then have a situation where we have more students drop later as they come here. That's not a good scenario for us. So we're keeping academic integrity as is. All right, on the ethnicity report here. We expected drops in enrollment, and as you can look through all this here, we saw there were drops in all areas, including white Caucasian enrollment. However, all of the numbers pretty much are relatively stable proportionally to the population of our students. So we're within 1%, plus or minus 1%, of where we were previous years as compared to overall population. So, of course, as your student population drops, all categories of demographics drop as well. And while we're down, for example, in African American by this year 16.48%, we're not necessarily starting at a 0 point here. Nationally, African American enrollment is down 13.4%. So we were down a little more than that, but it's not like everyone nationally they're at 0 or 1% increases or that sort of situation. Hispanic, we were down 7.80 nationally. Hispanic enrollment is down 13.5%, so we overperformed on that. Caucasian white students, we were down 6.36%, Nationally, that number's 11% down. So we outperformed that as well. So again, while our numbers are down here, we still are doing better in some regards to what nationally we're looking at. And I'm going to share with you all here towards the end of the presentation a little bit about what we're doing to address these issues as well, even though we're somewhere in the neighborhood on the national, down in terms of nationally. Fall 2021 enrollment update. These numbers are much more positive than we had last fall, and even the fall before that, and certainly this spring. So I'm happy to share some of this information for us as we rebound here. Freshman applications right now, we are still down about 3.86%. It's about 193 applications. Our admits, however, as we look through here, we're up 18.9% in admits, which is terrific. That equates to 531 more admits than we had last year. Our probably more important for us is, excuse me, we look at app to admit conversion yields, how students convert from application to admit, how well we're doing in terms of reaching out to them. Fall of 2020, we were at 56.1. Right now, we're at 57.4%. App to admit conversion, how do we convert them from application to admit? This fall, we were at 69.3. We're now at 69.7%. That represents a 12.3% increase in app to admit conversion versus the previous year. Transfer applications right now, we are at. You can see on your report there. At the time in which we ran this report, we were at minus 3.2 or minus 18 in applications. Today we're at plus 4.76 and plus 32. That is not on your report. I just pulled these numbers here a little while ago. Admits, we were down 8.1% or minus 25. Again, the N is small. Right now we're at plus 0.26 or 1.1. So we're about even. So we're making more improvements each week as we go with the fall numbers. Completed applications, very important for us. A student can fill out an application, but if they don't complete, it really doesn't help us that much. So completed applications, we're running up 246 completed apps or plus 7.23%. We're very pleased to see that because an application that's not complete, of course, will never convert to a matriculated student. A completed application, on the other hand, we hope, as we work through the admissions funnel, will complete eventually and enroll here and matriculate. All right, domestic graduate applications and admits. This was at 25 weeks out. At that point, our applications were down 15.3%. The N is pretty small here, so the numbers 1 or 2 will change this significantly. So we were down 37 student applications at that point. Just for perspective, we're now down 13.91 and down 42 applications. Admits, we were down 26.6 a couple weeks ago, or 29 admits. Now we're down 11.36 or minus 15. So we're improving again each week on there. Again, the numbers seem high, but the percentage, but the N is small. So you 10 or so each way will drastically sway these percentages here. International applications, and this is really where we see applications that are surging at this point. As you know, many of the embassies around the globe were closed, and students have been not able to receive visas to come here to study, and there's considerable pent-up demand at this point. Currently, right now, our apps, you can look at the numbers here, but our apps for summer, and this is fall numbers here, so I will tell you summer. I did not have a graph for summer up here, but I'll tell you summer. Right now, we have 927 apps for summer. That's up from 670 from this week in summer 2020, are up 260%. Admits 419 total for summer, up 281 versus this week in summer of 2020. That's up 203%. For the fall international numbers, even since I ran this report a couple weeks ago, you see 1194 up there. We're now at 1944, and we're up 637 from this week in fall of 20. That's plus almost 50%. Admits, we were at 284, we're at 563 right now. We're up 225 from this week in fall of 2020. That's up 39.96%. So we're very pleased to see these numbers. We have a staff in the Graduate International Student Services area that are working very hard and tirelessly every week to try to process this crush of applications at this point. We're cautiously optimistic that many of these students will translate into enrollment for our university, but to see an increase of 260, 203% is certainly good news for our institution. And then last, I'd like to share some of our initiatives for spring and summer of 21. I'd like to start with talking about a diversity committee that we've brought up within enrollment management. This is running parallel to the President's Commission, so we're not necessarily connected, but where the President's Commission is looking at the 100,000-foot level, we are dealing on the granular level. So even though we're up and doing some great work in some areas in admissions, African American, for example, or Latino and Latina populations are still historically been declining. What are we going to do? Why are those happening? How do we address those issues? So this group was formed precisely to get down into the granular level. We have staff that's going to look at data. We have 4 professors, 5 faculty members on this committee, nominated by each of their colleges to serve along with myself. We have a student as well on this to serve as well. We met this week for the first time. We had an hour, and we thought we could go 3 or 4 hours. So we are going to set up our goals, objectives, KPIs, outcomes, and we're going to close the loop here in assessing each one of these. So I will have more information to share at the next meeting on kind of what we're looking at, but I wanted to share that we are urgently addressing these issues on the granular level in admissions. We're also working with State Fair on a concurrent enrollment MOU. This allows students to take courses concurrently here and at State Fair while receiving credit towards their associate degree as we pipeline those students directly in from an earned associate degree into a bachelor's degree here. We have some very, very good working relationships with State Fair, and they're excited about this MOU. We're excited about it as well, and I look forward to sharing how some of those outcomes in the near future shape up. We're also developing a virtual campus-wide tour. We're working with Google on that. They outsource it to a third-party company, but this is a high-definition camera that we've already done a tour of our campus before the weather changed a little bit, but we have 360 views of all buildings now on campus. We're going to have a narration as well, so we're going to overlay verbal narration on that here in the next couple weeks and share that with the community, and of course push that out for emails and get students to see our virtual tour as well. We're continuing our test optional admissions. It's been very well received, and we are continuing that here indefinitely as we continue through this pandemic. We're also working on predictive modeling. We have been working very closely enrollment management and UAir in developing a model that looks backwards at students' propensity, likelihood factors to come to our university, and then apply that on the next year's class. We then can score each student on their likelihood to attend and share that with our admission counseling staff so they don't have to call 1,000 students or 10,000 students, that they can focus on the students that have the greater likelihood. So that is up and running now. We also just started a high school counselor advisory board and a transfer counselor advisory board. We've invited high school guidance counselors to our campus, socially distanced, of course, and same thing with college guidance counselors. We had almost 35 to 40 last few weeks ago that came to our campus to hear a little about what we have to offer, some of our new programs and such. That was shared and very well received by both the high school guidance counselor community and the university two-year counselors as well. We're also buying high school student names. This is not unusual for universities to buy SAT, ACT, NRCCUA names for students who have opted in to receive information. But we've typically done that at the senior level, as they become seniors. We're moving that back to help promote our university to high school sophomores and juniors. So we're buying PSAT, early ACT numbers as well. We want to be in front of the students earlier in their college choice process. And then, of course, we're continuing to work on trying to share about FAFSA, filling out the FAFSA form, financial aid literacy with our high school and community college partners. Obviously, we like for them to come to our university, but it's also a public service for students, all students, especially because our population, many first generation, Pell eligible. We want to make sure that we're providing information appropriate for that population to come to our university, and that's been, of course, well received by our peers in high schools and community colleges. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
On your internationals, I've got several questions.
Sure.
Internationals, one country or more diversified than what we experienced in the past? Do we know?
Obviously, India is a large population for us. They continue to surge. I think it's if you look at it, that's a big population for us. But we do have other universities that are other countries that are sending their students or have student interests on there. We are continuously working with our partners globally, developing MOUs, working with their agents out there to secure more student interest. And I think that's the key, because word of mouth, of course, with international is huge. And if we can develop get some kind of foothold in that, I think that's going to be a positive thing for us.
The other question I had was on one of your slides had freshmen and transfers, the huge spike. Is that common across the state of Missouri and regionally, or is that more just us? And the second part of that question goes to Shari and housing as well. Are we looking at those being on campus or are part of those virtual, and how does that all, do you see all that breaking down?
Well, sure. When I talk to other universities right now for our freshman applications, and I work with other enrollment management vice presidents across the state. We are in first place we have the most interest of any school, and that includes Mizzou and Missouri State and such. So we are doing something right on that. So I'm pleased to be able to share that with everyone. And then some schools are in the kind of the middle, and other schools have other challenges. But overall, we feel pretty good about that. The housing, we are up in housing. Last I saw, we were up about 40 housing applications at this point. But when you look at, I don't want to get too granular here, but we have students who have signed up for orientation but not housing but not orientation, and then part of the orientation, not completed the orientation. We're looking at 400 students sitting out there right now. That's unprecedented. I mean, for us to have that many right now in that scenario. So as you can imagine, guess what our most urgent priority is at this point? Is working individually with these students to get them converted over and get them into orientation. So that's some really positive news for us as well.
Do you see part of that possibly is because there's not a fee, application fee associated?
Well, once you get past the app fee, it means some students will apply if there's no app fee, but for them to go further in the process, it indicates true intent to enroll in the university, because there is some fees for orientation and signups or such. So for us to see that's very encouraging. Absolutely.
I do, Dr. Long, if you don't mind. Back to this, I don't know what page it's on, but back in your presentation where it talks about you mentioned it just a minute ago about the conversion rate, and I'm really not asking specifics, but I don't know what you all do specifically to convert those applications into admits. But I noticed in 17 and 18, our conversion rate was way better, and I wondered what we were doing in 17 and 18 versus where we were in, of course, 20 was an odd year, but 21 to get those applicants converted to an admit.
Yeah, when you look at 17, 18, for almost everywhere in the nation, I worked at a previous university, those numbers spiked. We just had a lot of students that were interested in universities. They were eager to attend. It was just a large end on that. So that was at the at the top, the apex of this boom that we had. And then, of course, we've been dropping since nationwide. We work, if we had hours to talk about, I could share all that information. We work diligently and tirelessly to work with students on a personalized level. We've brought that back here to really work individually with students here. Now, we can't work with every single one every single day, but what we do now is we try to reach out to each one of them to help them understand the process and kind of demystify everything as we're going along. The predictive modeling is going to help us significantly, so it will score each student, allows the admission counselors to work with each one who has a greater propensity or likelihood to come to the university. And I will share, there will be students who don't have high scores there. We are not going to forget about them. They're going to continue to receive aggressive CRM messaging for us, or email messaging for us as well. We're working with our partners across campus. There are people here working tirelessly to get those students into orientation, housing. I mean, this is not just one facet. This is a multi-facet. What was the old verbiage? It takes a village. It really does here, and we're working very closely. We have a very seamless process here, which I'm really happy to be part of.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't know if there was a magic formula there to do the conversions, and obviously you're working on it, and I just happened to notice those other 2 years where the conversion rate was much better. But I do appreciate you doing the advisory board for high school counselors. That's something we had talked about, not only for counselors, but for alums that are teaching in our market area. And you didn't mention that here. I don't know if you're doing anything for that, but I am glad to see you're doing something with the counselors and having them on campus.
Well, thank you. And we're actually also looking at that because we know there are teachers across the state in classrooms, school guidance counselors and such, who are alum from UCM, and they're great ambassadors for our institution. And we are looking at possible ways to engage them. We just haven't had an opportunity this year because of COVID. We just can't get into schools at this point, but it is on our radar.
Yeah, we just have so many alums teaching that we've talked about that before. We just need to find some way to get to them as well. But I appreciate you doing what you've done for the guidance counselor. So,
yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
My questions relate to what Governor Apney's talked about. One is there's usually a large gap between the applications and admit. And I guess what I was going to ask you to do at maybe one of our meetings is if you could just walk us through what that looks like, because the gap is so wide, between the application process and the admit process. And I'm wondering, of those that are not admitted or the applications completed, but the standards or criteria don't meet what you're looking for. I was looking at 1 year where you accepted a certain GPA, I think that was 2017, and then this year I think you had 295, and you said, we're keeping our high standards. And so I was wondering, what was the difference between your high standard in 2017 and 2020? Was that a high standard in 2017, or was it a low standard?
Sure.
And so that's, those are some questions that I have. The other question, I was wondering your composition for we want to commend you for your advisory committees that you're setting up. I think that'll be a great asset. The high school advisory board, I was wondering, how did you select the representation for that board?
Sure.
What was it based on?
Right. It was based on outreach. We sent out to high schools and asked them if they have an interest to collaborate with us. It was basically I don't know the exact mechanism that we did that, but we did send out inquiries to those schools. They then responded and said that we would like to send a school counselor X or Y, whoever it is, to your institution to learn a little bit more about the school. I don't think we didn't get in, I don't believe we got into the granular part of trying to figure out who the actual individual was. We probably left that up to the institution.
I know there's been concern about recruiting in Kansas City, and I was just wondering, do you have representation from Kansas City on that board?
Yeah, my understanding is most of them are more local, but we also reached out to some of the Kansas City schools as
I
well.
think there needs to be a concerted effort, and I was talking to Dr. Best about reaching out in Kansas City. And I think if you're interested in reaching out there, that would be a great avenue to make sure that you have representation on that board from Kansas City, because I know he talked to me about connections in Kansas City, and that's a good way for you to get some connections.
Absolutely. We're not shy going out to the schools there. I think one of the things may be that locals come here to our campus. We could possibly consider going out there and picking a site and then deliver the same kind of information. That could be a possibility. I think some of this has just been limited somewhat with social distancing and such, but I am certainly very amenable to reaching out to the school counselors in Kansas City. I think that's a terrific idea.
So I would like for us to follow up on that process between Emits and the other question. Let's see.
Oh, can I also, on the apps and Emits there, we have a full funnel there. We have a communication plan between apps and Emits. I know you see that disparity. That disparity is not unusual for every place I've worked at. There's going to be students who fill out the application. Most students will choose 2-3 schools to submit an application to.
Yeah.
And so our goal here, our entire goal here is to convert those students, and we want them to get excited about our institution, of course, to come to us and then admit and then come ultimately matriculate. So it's in our best interest to find ways to convert those students successfully.
I agree, but I was just wondering, I'm concerned about, UCM. What's our issue, if we could look at that?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to look at that, no problem.
The other question, well, I can do that with other. Let's go, any other questions regarding this particular item?
I have one question. Is it possible that, and I don't know how much of it's confidential, but that we could have a benchmark with Northeast, Missouri, Springfield, and Kirksville on our performance on enrollment? And you made a statement about Springfield. I had understood that they were almost having a stellar year this year with their enrollment and what they were doing.
Sure.
I don't know that to be a fact, but certainly with these being state schools, there ought to be some information that we can understand, that we can glean, and I think those are the 3 most familiar institutions with us,
Right.
if we could.
The information you're talking about actually for apps to Admits to Enrolled, that's public information. They're in the common data sets that are published and are available on any IR page. But as soon as we end the,
Statement on that.
yeah, I'm happy to share those benchmarks based upon the publicly shared information. Not an issue at all.
Dr. Langston's reference earlier about how well we're doing currently is relied upon interaction with the other enrollment management VPs. And so it's a self-report in terms of the current dynamic, just as a reference.
Yeah. The report I shared with you about how we're performing against other institutions, we do share information amongst ourselves to see how we're all doing, because frankly in the past we've all been kind of down. So it's but it also serves as a motivator to each of our schools to help continue to move forward. We have very, very good working relationships with our colleagues. And yeah, sure.
Dr. Langston, I also had similar questions to both Governor Abney and Governor Long, and about the admits and applications and converting those. And I like to see that we're continuing the test optional admissions process. I think that's really good, and I look forward to a further conversation about that. My question for today, and I know this is something you keep an eye on, is the tuition scholarship disparity, or I think it's tuition revenue disparity. I know we've talked about this before. on international students, do they have a greater disparity in that since they will be paying full out-of-state tuition? And I might be wrong on that, but is there a greater contribution towards the overall university with having students like that in terms of financially?
Right, we have federal guidelines on what we can provide for international students. They have to provide statements of income, being able to pay, come in and pay at the university. We definitely monitor that as well. So that's something which we look at conscientiously. As far as our domestic students, we do it's called the tuition discount rate, and that's the rate between how much the full sticker price is versus how much we discount students, and we pay particular attention to that from a revenue standpoint. We have a committee that runs to look at all new scholarship opportunities. We certainly don't want to increase our giving so much that we're not sustainable. We want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for students to attend universities and provide access to the universities, and at the same time there's some obviously revenue generation that occurs there, so which every university in the nation subscribes to. So we pay particular attention to that discount rate, making sure that it doesn't get out of whack on either side there.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have one more question, Dr. Long. I don't want to keep dwelling on this, Dr. Langston, but I just, on this conversion rate, and you mentioned in 17, 18 that, people just, kids have more of an interest in going to college, and I guess I don't quite understand that because we've had 4,800 applicants, so that obviously they're interested. I just want to make sure that if we were doing something right in 17 and 18 on that conversion rate, I know you weren't here at that time, but we obviously were doing something right where that conversion rate was better. So I guess I'd like to get more information on that.
Okay, sure.
Is what I'm asking.
Yeah,
what we were doing right to get a better conversion rate.
Yeah, I can see it when I'm looking at the same numbers here y'all are, and I do see it's like, well, how we are able to convert so many more back then and not now. I think that there's some of those dynamics has to do with the fact that students have they're looking at they're choosing, they have more options. Even back to 2017, students look at multiple schools right now. Not to say they weren't before. It's just that they have a lot of opportunities, especially now with the scholarships that universities are offering. They're more plentiful at this point, so they can be more choosy, so to speak, on there. And this phenomenon, what I was trying to say was this phenomenon on this conversion rate between the accept or admit to and enroll there, it played out everywhere across the nation where there's a better conversion rate in 17, 18 versus now. But I'm happy to delve into some additional details, provide you a little bit more insight on that. We could look at that.
I get that, and I know there's a lot of competition out there, and but we obviously have kids interested in going to school or they wouldn't have sent their applications in. But I want to make sure UCM is getting our piece of the pie. I want to make sure we're doing everything we can do to attract those students here, whether they've applied at one or two or three universities.
I completely agree with you.
That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement with you. And
if I could make an observation on that particular thing, when you look at our yield over time, it is trending downward, and yield is something Dr. Langston and I have talked about almost weekly. We meet with the deans every week at 11, and most recently, when you look at the number of admits for our current fall 21 class, it's around 3,500 completed apps. Only about a third of those have engaged with us. That is, they've signed up for orientation or housing or one or the other, or both, or partially. And so that leaves 2/3 of our admit pool that, hasn't said they're very much interested in looking at us for the fall. They could be late deciders. So what our deans are going to be doing over the next months is taking that 2/3 of our current admitted pool and reaching out to them if they've expressed an interest in a particular major in those colleges, because we know that academic connection may be the thing that tips an admitted student or a completed app student to enroll with us. So we've got a big opportunity on that 3,500 as we sit here today. And I know Dr. Langston and I are looking forward to returning our yield to its historic averages over 5 years and really exceeding it. And rather than low 20s, getting back to that 40, low 40s number of yield of those who complete apps. And then I think that's when we'll recapture our market share and return to some robust freshman classes, because right now our first-time freshman trends have been on a 6-year decline.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I certainly agree with, they've not made contact with us, but they made an application with us, so we ought to make contact with them.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate you putting that together with the
Yeah, I think we've got two opportunities, both those that apply and then those that complete, and we've got to really aggressively work both of those groups.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll agree with Provost Bridgman. We talk about this every week. I mean, this is where it really hits, rubber hits the road, where we can find out if these students are going to matriculate ultimately to the institution. We do believe that even with those 2017-18 numbers, we can do better than that, and we're working very hard to try to impact that.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers, there's not that many students that we couldn't have some kind of way to contact them, and I appreciate what you're doing with the deans, but 1,500 students, we could have somebody call them. Say,
we're doing it. We're calling students, we're emailing, we're texting, it's also been challenging because a lot of this has been had to be done virtual, and many of our students are, my best word is zoomed out. They're in classrooms right now, Zooming and doing more Zooming, and they just are having a hard time interacting. This is not just here. Again, that meeting we have with other VPs for enrollment across the state, their attendance at those type of virtual events or the virtual reach out has been less than stellar, because I think there's fatigue associated with that.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we get
our share,
and more by being aggressive with them.
I'm with you. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. This particular metrics report, is that part of?
That's not part of our committee.
It's not, okay.
It would be President Best.
Okay, we can do that. We'll move that to the consent agenda as an information item if there's no other discussion. Okay, the April committee agenda for April.
Looking ahead to April, I expect that we will entertain some curricular matters in April.
Okay.
As the board has previously requested, we will bring additional opportunities for conversation on enrollment. We will have some significant movement ahead on some processes related to retrenchment that we should be able to also share. And then the Gen Ed review that the board had requested, at this point, almost a year and a half ago, that process is coming to recommendation, and I'll be able to share that with the board as well. And part of that enrollment, based on our conversation, Dr. Long, enrollment management is putting together a briefing paper, a thorough briefing paper on our interaction in Kansas City and the work we do across the different sectors and the processes that we follow. And I look forward to being able to also share detail with the board on our approaches there.
And I do want to let you know, I do appreciate the progress that you've made and all the work that you're doing, trying to pull all this together and make it make sense, and that work is really appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Long.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Do we have other items? If not, the meeting is adjourned.
If I look at the computers, it is not 10:55, it is 10:25. 5-minute break before we start at 10:30 for the finance and ed.
Yes, I think, what I need to do, we had a couple of members of this committee not able to attend right now. They will be here this afternoon, but they weren't able to attend this. For the purpose of the Finance and Administration Committee, I would like to name myself as a committee member today, just for today only. So, do we need a motion for that?
Nope.
Nope.
It's
Okay.
within your authority
Okay, so
as president.
carry on.
So do you make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd make that motion, yes.
Very good, thank you. Next up is item number 2, student tuition and general fees, tab, it's kind of blurry on here. 17, yes, Bill.
All right. Thank you, Governor. Good morning. So under tab 17, we would like to seek Board of Governors approval for the FY 2022 student instructional tuition and general fees. Give a little background. Tuition and fees are set by the governing board of each Missouri public institution of higher ed and are reported to MDHEWD for publication. And in accordance with the HESFA rules, UCM is permitted to increase tuition and student fees charged to Missouri resident undergrad students this year from $7,912.80 to $8,424.76, which is an increase of $511.96 without incurring a penalty. So historically, UCM has charged different rates for on-campus and online courses. And originally, the higher online tuition covered the added cost of online instruction and support services, as well as online course and program development. But as hybrid courses are added and course delivery modifications that were necessitated by the pandemic, the cost differential between the two modalities is no longer significant. Recently, UCM Student Government Association leadership, following consultation with SGA members and select other student organizations, stated support for a new model whereby the resident on-campus courses and online courses are priced the same for undergraduates. And this approach is deemed to provide greater clarity in pricing and more flexibility for students by eliminating the need to consider the difference in the tuition rates. And so currently, UCM charges $237.60 per credit hour for on-campus face-to-face classes and flex courses, and $292.05 per credit hour for online and hybrid courses. So based on financial analysis, we're recommending the following. The tuition for all in-state undergraduates would be established at $258.25 per credit hour for fall 2021. So this is a result of the analysis to merge the two groups together. And the additional overall increase in HESFA relevant tuition and general fees equal to the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers of 1.4%. And to do this, the university needs to seek a HESFA penalty waiver from the Commission of Higher Education based on the the resulted blended tuition rate being revenue neutral and the total average tuition and fees being increased by the CPI. The new model will have modest impact to the university's total Missouri resident undergraduate tuition and fee revenue, resulting from the inflationary increase of 1.4% rather than the blended rate. In addition to the new undergraduate tuition rate, approval is sought for other FY 2022 student instructional rates as outlined in the attachment 1 to the paper. Proposed rate changes include, and I won't go through all of them, but I'll hit some of the main ones. Non-resident undergraduate tuition for Warrensburg on-campus and Whiteman Air Force Base at twice the proposed new student resident undergraduate rate. A 3% increase to on-campus graduate resident and graduate non-resident tuition. No change in the $283.15 per credit hour rate for cohort undergraduate and cotelee undergraduate. An increase in graduate tuition of $10.10 per credit hour for online and hybrid. An increase of graduate tuition, or an increase in graduate tuition of 3% for entrepreneurial and 5.7% for cotelee. And an increase of 1.4% for online PhD. An increase of $6.90 per credit hour for the business graduate with rate applicable regardless of location or mode. And an increase of $6 per credit hour to CS and CIS graduate rate applicable regardless of location or mode, an increase of $2.10 per credit hour for dual credit and dual enrollment courses, a 1.4% increase to professional development courses, and a 2.2% increase to limited cost courses. And management also seeks board consent of the 2022 student general fees as outlined in attachment 2. And these rates are not inclusive of any board-approved program or course fees. And so the adjustments that we made to the general fees essentially gets us to that 1.4% CPI increase that we were hoping to achieve overall.
Do you mind commenting real quick that we're not going alone on this, other institutions as well?
Yep, be happy to. Currently, Missouri State has already submitted their waiver to the state, and we're told that Southeast and Northwest are also doing it. And I know there's been talk of others, but we haven't heard any specifics on that. And I will also add that should the board approve to do this, we've got to get the waiver from the state. But we did have a conversation with the commissioner last week just to kind of get her unofficial thoughts on what we were doing. And obviously she can't rule until she gets the official waiver, but she thought our approach, she had a positive impression to our approach, and actually gave us some suggestions of things to include in the waiver, which were very helpful. So.
The only question I had about that, and I think you all have researched that, but I just, when I first looked at that proposal, I just wanted to make sure we weren't incenting online classes, just where the kids wouldn't be on campus, the students wouldn't be on campus, so they, their parents wouldn't say, why don't you stay at home now because the online classes are not as expensive, and so I think you all have done some research on that.
Yeah, well, and what we've looked at what are our students currently doing, and right now, let's see, 58% of our students are taking both already. We've got 10% of our, and this is as of this spring, 10% of our students currently are all online. I'm talking undergrad here, and 48% already take both. Okay, and I think there was some conversation earlier about students really do see the advantage of being on campus, and I don't think that's going away. Really, the advantage of this is it does give them some flexibility in their schedule, so that they can achieve what they want to do without having to take that financial piece into consideration as much. So I think it just gives them that flexibility, but I don't think it's removing that value, and we don't anticipate these percentages really to shift much based on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, any indigestion with any of this?
Yeah, I actually have a few comments. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. First off, I commemorate the effort by everyone involved in this innovative decision. But more importantly, I want to say thank you to Dr. Best. I appreciate the effort that he made working with Student Government Association and tasking them with going and speaking to student organizations about it. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to speak with several organizations alongside Student Government Association about this. And although there were a small number of students who take exclusively in-person classes and did raise a concern regarding an increase that they would see more than usual, I'm confident that, and from these conversations, more than a large majority of students were very appreciative of this change. They were on board with this idea, and all of that led SGA to make that recommendation to Dr. Best that student support was behind that. And so I do appreciate that, and in the end, making this change comes with extensive support as noted in the board packet. But Bill, I do have a question on a separate note.
Yes, sir. On
the general fees. I understand this is all falls within the 1.4% inflation increase. Mm-hmm. But the athletic fee increased by 22%, and the facilities fee increased by 68%. Obviously, both of those were major jumps, still within the 1.4%, but was there something that sparked those two changes to jump up so significantly, leaving all the other fees not increasing as much?
Yeah, and that's exactly right, and that the overall goal is to achieve the 1.4% overall, and that's what we will achieve with it. It gives us an opportunity by addressing these particular ones. What we will do then is shift, and I appreciate the question because I should mention that we'll take general dollars back out of those areas. So the overall impact, it's not like we're giving additional monies to those areas. There will actually be a shift. So that's basically how we benefit from the tuition, or I'm sorry, the fee increase, and then it goes in and helps support the university as a whole. So it wasn't, so it's not targeted to add additional funds there. It's really just an accounting transfer to pull those monies back out again.
Okay, that makes sense, and
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying.
I appreciate you asking that. I should have pointed that out.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? This is a approval to move this on. This is a preliminary action item. Thank you.
And I do just want to make sure, I hope I was clear, that based on your motion, then we will be sending the waiver request to the state and then get a response from them. So, okay,
How
thank
long
you.
will it take to get that approval?
Oh, it takes quite a while. It could be late May or early June even before they rule. It'll at least be into May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is room and board rates, tab 18.
Yes, thank you. And Dr. Bax, I don't know if you want to go ahead and come up. I would imagine there'll be a few questions that you could help me with. So we are seeking board approval for room and board rates for the 21-22 fiscal year. And just as background, university governors approve the room and board rates for the upcoming academic year each spring prior to the start of the new fiscal year. And just a reminder that the university housing is an auxiliary enterprise generating the revenues necessary to offset operating expenses. The housing operating budget includes personnel costs, general operations, utilities, routine and deferred maintenance, debt retirement, capital renovations, furniture purchases, and other upgrades. And so the funding source is auxiliary funds for this. So the reason and timing for the recommendation, there certainly are personnel costs, including health insurance, and then utilities, property insurance, and other things that have all increased and continue to increase. And I need to point out that, it's between the room and board, the meal plan rate is based on the dining services contract. And that contract allows for an increase based on the consumer price index for urban consumers, food away from home. And the food away from home index for the 12 months ending August 31 of 2020 was 3.5%. And so the Sodexo has decided, again, per the contract, to do the full amount. I will mention, too, this is going into the third year of the contract. And per the contract, in year 2, they were not allowed to have any increase. So I did just want to point that out. I also want to, if you look at the table on the second page, you'll see, you can see the second group of box where it shows silver plan, gold plan, and platinum plan meals. It doesn't show a 3.5% increase. It's somewhat less than that. And that's because built into that are certain levels of dining dollars, depending on which plan that you buy. And those aren't going up. So the denominator, such, it ends up being a less than 3.5% overall, since that piece of it's not going up. So I just want to, if there's any confusion about that. So if approved, the University Housing will announce and publicize the room and board rates to current and future UCM students. And so potential concerns, it's really, as I said, things are going up in terms of Mosers and healthcare and utilities and everything else. So that's the reason for it. And you'll notice that overall on the room side, the percent increase is 1%, recognizing that there's a significant increase on the board side. So we were cognizant of that and didn't want to increase the whole package too much. So the table you see there has the semester and room board rates for double occupancy and single occupancy, and then the monthly rates on the lower half of the table are for the apartments. And again, if you look to the far right, it's about a 1% increase for those.
The only question I have about that is, since we've decided to go back to double occupancy rooms, have we had any comments about that?
I'm going to turn to Dr. Bax.
So most of the comments that we've received concerning moving back to the double occupancy are questions concerning logistical issues. They were not concerns about the actual decision of double occupancy, but more about how individuals would be matched with roommates or how they could go about getting the room that they actually wanted to have with an assigned roommate, things like that. It wasn't actually an expressed concern about the fact that we were going to double occupancy. Now, I did talk to the Office of Accessibility Services the other day. They have seen applications for exemption based on medical needs for singles. We always have those. We did not have as many of those last year because everybody was getting singles. So we did expect to see that go up, but we have not received some kind of public outcry through social media or something like that about the fact that we were going to double occupancy.
I know we had some negative comments about the single occupancy. You
We
had
did.
mentioned us last time.
Yes, we did. We had both students and parents express concerns about the isolation and loneliness of their students because of the single occupancy.
I was just concerned whether they were having COVID-related questions, but you've answered that, so great.
And Shari, you basically answered the question. One of the board members that couldn't be here had that very question. And follow up to that is if we have a student or family that say, we want a single, do we have graphs, rates somewhere we can give it to them and say, here's what it will be?
Oh, absolutely. So we will publicize, just like we're publicizing the fact that what our rate changes are and everything, we'll publicize what the rates are for singles. And we will also publicize the process by which a student needs to go through if they need to request an exemption for medical reasons. So a student can get a single in multiple ways. One is because they have a medical need and can present such documentation to the Office of Accessibility, and that is determined to be an appropriate accommodation. But then they can also just get a single because that's what they want to do and that they're willing to pay for a single. And so we have both of those available to the students, and they will be informed of those.
Any other questions? Make a motion to
Move that through to consent.
a plenary action item. All right, next up, thank you, Shari.
Thank you.
Next up is non-resident tuition waiver expansion, tab 19.
Yes, thank you. So we'd like to seek board approval to expand the current waiver of non-resident portion of tuition and fees to the Mid-America Intercollegiate Athletic Association Conference border states, which would add 5 additional states to the current waiver program, and those would be Colorado, Texas, New Mexico, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Give you some background. Currently, the university offers the UCM bound out-of-state scholarship to residents from the 8 states that border Missouri, which are Arkansas, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. And through this scholarship, the non-resident portion of undergraduate tuition is waived for students from these states. So if this program was expanded to include all the states that border those states with the MIAA conference schools, that would result in the 5 additional states that would be added. The timing, supported reasons and timing, UCM maintains visibility in these additional states as a result of competition in intercollegiate athletics, and a certain number of these states, namely Texas and Colorado specifically, are experiencing significant population growth. And further, UCM currently maintains active Mule Nation chapters in Texas and Colorado as a result of the large base of alumni who live in those states. And so management believes that expanding the waiver will provide an additional catalyst for recruitment and attract additional students from these states. The potential concern is if this expansion would fail to attract additional students, there is potential loss of revenue, as there are currently some students from these states. And right now, as of this fall, there were 48 undergraduates currently from those states. And so some of those do pay the non-resident portion. Now, I will say that it's not 100% because some are athletes or have other things, reasons that they're here, that they do get some other support. So we had looked at it, and right now, at risk is approximately $175,000 based on the fall. So, and that's kind of a moving number depending on the year. So a relatively small dollar amount at risk.
Any questions? To the action, plenary action? Yes, sir. All right, thank you very much. We'll move that on. Next up is James Kirkpatrick Library Roof Restoration, tab 5.
All right, thank you. Okay. So we are seeking board approval to award a contract to Weatherproofing Technologies Incorporated for the amount of $1,780,830.12 to provide all labor, materials, and provisions necessary for the restoration of metal roof panels and replacement of single-ply, fully adhered membrane roof for the James C. Kirkpatrick Library. And give you some background, the building's metal roof panels are marred and discolored, and the single-ply, fully adhered membrane roof has exceeded its useful life expectancy and is in deficient condition, delaminating from the roof deck in large areas. And just to give a little bit of history, we have about $700,000 in an insurance settlement related to damage to that roof from a storm several years ago. So we've had that, and now I'll kind of jump down to funding for a minute. So we've got that, and then part of the governor's list of items under the federal budget stabilization funds, the deferred maintenance, we had listed that in there, so that was approved for the additional basically $1,079,000. So that's how we would fund it. So on January 19th of 2021, we solicited through a cooperative with Weatherproofing Technologies for the proposal. And so we got a response that resulted in the $1,780,000 bid, and it was reviewed by FPO to ensure that the proposal specifications are compliant, and also the procurement office ensured that the company is responsible and has capacity. And so the supporting reasons, the project does consist of the restoration of the metal roof panels to remove any rust, to bare metal, clean and pressure wash the existing metal, priming and applying 2 coats of acrythane, preserving the metal panels and eliminating discolored and marred areas. It will also include the removal of existing single-ply membrane roof, installation and metal flashing down to the structural deck, and installation of new insulation, and a 3-ply modified bitumen, I call it asphalt, roof extending the roof integrity.
Mod bit.
Huh?
Just call it mod bit.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know why they come up with different names, but there you have it. So, anyway.
Bill, we received in that deferred money that we have to use for deferred maintenance, we received about $5 million, right?
Yeah, just under 5.
Right.
And this was a significant piece of it.
And now I will make a motion to move that forward to the consent agenda.
Very good, thank you. Next up is the Fitzgerald Hall Fraternity Rooms Project, tab 6.
All right, thank you again. We are seeking board approval to award a contract to Respec Construction in the amount of $472,411.50 to provide all labor, materials, and provisions necessary for interior renovation to Fitzgerald Hall Fraternity Rooms. Give a little background. As a response to closing the fraternity complex, fraternities were given the option to have a residential space and chapter rooms within Fitzgerald Hall. 4 of the chapters, as well as all 8 of the National Pan-Hellenic Council chapters, desired space. The project consists of the general modifications to Fitzgerald Hall to provide fraternity housing and chapter rooms for 4 fraternities. In addition, it provides the additional chapter rooms plus community meeting space for the 8 NPHC chapters. Several existing rooms will be combined and converted into new chapter community rooms. So a bid was put out on January, or an invitation for bid rather, was put out on January 8, 2021, and that was out to the Kansas City Daily Record, St. Louis City Monitor, Columbia Daily Tribune, and Springfield News Leader and Daily Star Journal. And so we received 8 responses by February 11, 2021. And you can see in the table there, we received responses from Respect Construction, Westport Construction, Royal Construction Services, E&K Companies, Perrick, Straub Construction Company, NW Rogers Construction, and Novu Construction and Technology. And so the winning bid at the $472,411.50 was from Respect Construction. And it was determined that they had provided a responsive bid and that they possessed the capacity and expertise to meet the requirements as specified in the invitation for bid. And the funding source is auxiliary funds through University Housing. The project consists of selective demolition, masonry, casework, doors, door hardware, gypsum board, flooring, painting, plumbing, and electrical. So it will provide that fraternity space and chapter rooms available due to the closing of the fraternity complex. Additionally, it consolidates all Greek chapters to the one location with transition of the NPHC chapters from South Todd to Fitzgerald.
And I know Dr. Bax as well as Tim may want to be a part of these questions as well. First of all, as the 4 chapters, do we have any numbers as far as anticipated members moving into Fitzgerald with this construction?
They started selecting. They have not started selecting their rooms yet, so we do not have that. But what we do have is an agreement with each chapter as to what their required occupancy of those spaces is.
Okay. And that kind of goes to my next question is, if a chapter decides, hey, this isn't for us, the cost of reverting back to making this a residence hall, is that going to be an additional?
And we would not necessarily convert the space back. We do have student housing interest programs on campus that we could potentially use that space for. The conversion involves space at the end of each hall that could continue to be used as a common space if we wanted it to. And then it involves having entry to the hallway that involves the student rooms that are in that chapter and that common area, and so we could just arrange to have that door left unlocked. So we would not necessarily have to convert it back and continue using it for other students. And there will be other students that are not affiliated necessarily with NPHC or IFC chapters that are living in Fitzgerald Hall in other areas.
Okay, thank you.
Will this project be done by fall?
It better be.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Great. Zach?
Move that we move that forward.
Zach's got a question.
I'm sorry.
2 questions. First, are these long-term agreements with the chapters, or are these a year-by-year type of thing?
Dr. Bax, could I ask you to come to the mic, please?
The chapters were asked to agree to live in the spaces for 3 years.
Okay.
It's not very realistic for us to ask for more than that for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of reasons why a chapter might not still be in on-campus housing, but we felt that 3 years of residency would at least allow us some financial revenue, but that would allow housing to recover from its expense in that area.
Yes, I agree. And I understood with the fraternity complex, freshmen were not allowed to live there their first semester. I want to say they could have lived there their second semester freshman year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that going to be the same thing with this situation?
The same thing that we had at the fraternity complex will be true of these spaces, and whether or not they are allowed to have second semester first-year students move in is dependent on whether or not the chapter is willing to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the university concerning how they're using those spaces, and the chapter's GPA and the student's GPA.
Okay.
And those are for student success reasons.
I understand completely. And my final question, is the NPHC situation identical to the IFC situation for this housing setup?
It's not identical because NPHC did not ask for student rooms to be associated with chapter space. So they are going to have chapter space and NPHC space. They're not necessarily going to have an entire hallway where students from that chapter live and there's a chapter room.
Okay.
And that was designed that way at their request.
And that's similar to what they have in Todd currently, correct?
That is similar to what they have in Todd.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bax.
Any other questions?
If not, I move that we move that to the consent agenda in the plenary session.
Very good. We'll move it forward. Thank you. Next up, Unified Communication Services, tab 7.
All right, thank you. We are seeking approval for UCM to enter into a 5-year contractual agreement with Converge One for installation, deployment, and implementation of an on-premise unified communication system or communication services solution. UCM is in the final year of a 5-year contract with AT&T for their hosted unified communication solution. And that type of solution continues. The voice over internet protocol services continues to be the dominant platform for providing voice services. So we released an invitation to bid to obtain competitive bids, and respondents were asked to provide bids for both an on-premise and a hosted unified communication services solution. And the funding source is general fund that will be allocated through the Office of Technology. The supporting reasons for the recommendation, our current agreement with AT&T ends at the end of June of this year, of 2021. And so you can see on the tables on the second page, it's broken out between the responses for on-premise communications and hosted communications. So 2 of the bids submitted have total annual costs less than the current monthly expenditure that we have for similar services. The cost of the 2 on-premise unified communication proposals are significantly less than the proposed cost for hosted unified communication solutions. And if the contract is not awarded, UCM will need to engage in negotiations with AT&T for continued service with a potential increase in the cost of their services. So currently, we are paying approximately $30,000 a month or $360,000 a year for our services for that service from AT&T. For their hosted service. So we got the responses back, as you can see on the top table for the on-premise solutions. The annual charges are significantly less, about half. And so we will achieve significant savings. Less so in the first year because, as you can see on there, and Converge One is the bolded line that you see there, the one we're recommending. There is a little less than $70,000 implementation charge, but we'll still see about $110,000 savings in year 1. And then in the future years, we'll see about $180,000 savings. But between what we're paying now and then obviously it's significantly less than what you see for the other ones that bid. So our potential concerns related to this really are none.
Any questions? Entertain a motion to move it to consent agenda.
I'd make that motion.
Motion moving. Next up, UCM multi-purpose audio system upgrade, tab number 8.
All right, thank you. We are requesting board approval to award a contract to Conference Technologies, Inc., otherwise known as CTI, for $498,657.20 to provide all labor, materials, and provisions necessary to replace and upgrade the audio system and infrastructure for the multipurpose building. The background is the multipurpose building hosts numerous NCAA sporting competitions and events and university commencement ceremonies and other activities. It serves as a major event space for university events such as celebrating Central Missouri Athletics Auction, homecoming pep rallies, and other events hosted by external clients such as Missouri Boys State. It is the largest interior venue the university has. The current audio system is more than 35 years old and has several blown speakers. It wasn't designed for the myriad of events for which it is being used, and in order to provide quality audio services during special events such as commencement, the university has had to contract out for supplemental equipment and services for, of course, additional costs. CTI has provided the university with supplemental audio support for special events such as commencement over the years. So recognizing the age of the existing equipment and the need for the equipment that meets the needs for the diversity of configurations and uses of the space, the university had CTI conduct an assessment of the space and make recommendations for improving the configuration of the audio equipment in the multi-purpose building back in 2020. The recommended system would meet the performance specifications set forth by UCM to include coverage for multiple use cases, including commencement, basketball games, practices, volleyball games, and general announcements. For commencement and similar events, we would be able to reroute the position of speakers to provide better quality audio for the event. This will allow the university to save significant expenditures for contracts for supplemental audio support for recurring events such as commencement. So the installation and setup will take approximately 6 weeks to complete and will cost the $498,000 that I mentioned above. The full funding for this project will come from institutional contingency funds from the 2021 operating budget. And the reason and timing for this is simply because the age and the functionality of the existing audio system just really needs to be replaced. So there's really no concerns from that. So anyway.
And I understand we rent those systems for commencement now, and they're pretty expensive, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd move that we move that to.
Will it be ready for this year, for May's commencement?
I don't think so.
We'd be really pushing
Yeah.
it to get it done before May.
Yeah.
We would love to have that happen, but with the fact that it's going to be in use for the fact that there are already events and things like that scheduled in the space between now and commencement would limit our ability to get that work happening during that period of time. So I cannot promise at this point in time that it would be ready for this May's commencement.
Any other questions?
I'd move we move it to the plenary consent agenda.
Motion carries. Next up is Resident Hall Apartment Laundry Room Equipment and Service, tab 10.
Thank you. We're seeking board approval for a 5-year residential hall and apartment laundry equipment and service contract award to Caldwell and Gregory LLC. Little background, the University of Central Missouri currently provides students in university housing with free and unlimited access to washers and dryers. The laundry equipment, was installed new in 2015 as part of the bid awarded at that time. The current laundry contract expires on June 30 of 2021. The request for proposal was issued on November 13th of last year and was also sent to 3 prospective bidders, and advertisements were placed in Kansas City Record, St. Louis Monitor, and Daily Star Journal. 2 prospective bidders attended the mandatory site visit, which took place on December 9th of 2020. The 2 responses were received and evaluations were conducted based on the ability to provide service, company background, references, financial stability, and cost. So the evaluation committee averages scores, and the vendor prices you can see, scores and vendor pricing you can see in the box below. Under this new proposed contract, once room charges are assessed, there will be no additional cost to students. The existing contract has a total annual cost of $66,475. The proposed pricing reflects a 9% increase over the contract awarded in 2016. This increased cost will be absorbed by the housing budget, so the funding source is auxiliary funds, university housing. The timing of this is because the contract with the current laundry provider is getting ready to expire. And a couple of the features, the new contract continues a laundry monitoring system for housing administration and students to view via the internet or mobile devices. It's a program offering a remote washer and dryer availability for residents and students while providing route operators with real-time service alerts. The contract includes connections to the Transact system, which allows students to access machines via their university ID. And additionally, the new contract provides seating and folding tables in laundry rooms that can accommodate the furniture. The equipment will be new, energy-efficient, front or top-loading machines. And so we're recommending a award of a 5-year contract to Caldwell and Gregory LLC.
I misspoke, that was tab 9.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that was, Monica gave me that information, I gave the wrong information. But any questions on that?
No, I move we move it forward to the consent agenda for plenary.
So moved. Next up, tab 10, Pest Control Services.
Thank you. we're seeking board approval for the award of a contract to Smithereen Pest Management for pest control services that strategically focus on the immediate removal or eradication and long-term prevention or suppression of pest problems through a combination of techniques such as monitoring for pest presence and establishing treatment threshold levels using only approved chemical or non-chemical practices to make the habitat less conducive to pest development, improving sanitation, and employing mechanical and physical controls. And so as a background, the pest control service provided shall furnish all the labor, tools, materials, and equipment necessary to accomplish the full treatment pest control services for all the areas and buildings, including exterior, dumpsters, recycle bins, all rooms, mechanical rooms, bomb shelters, closets, toilets, kitchens, hallways, stairwells, attics, elevators, plus any other new building portion or port not specifically described herein. New buildings or portions of existing buildings not covered would require additional pricing, quote, by the contractor for university review and approval. So on November 17th, we put out an invitation for bid, again in the Kansas City Record, St. Louis City Monitor, Springfield News Leader, and Daily Star Journal. January 7th, we received the 4 responses for pest control services. They were reviewed for responsiveness by the procurement office and determined that they had the capacity and expertise to meet the bid specifications as designed in the bid. And so we're recommending the award for a response total of $42,994.13. And I want to say that was for the base services that were specified, obviously, and hopefully won't need, but additional services could go beyond that. But so that's what we're recommending. The contract will be funded by the FPO budget and also the auxiliary budget. Reason and timing, pest control services are an effective manner for minimizing risk to people, property, and environment, and provides an efficient and economical method to provide pest control services on campus.
Any questions?
We move it forward to the consent agenda in the plenary session.
Very good, thank you. Motion passes. Next up is procurement report, tab C1.
Yes, thank you. So again, I won't read the procurement summary, but just wanted to see if there were any particular questions on it at this point.
Anyone have any questions?
The only question I had in there was I noticed there was a proposal for cleaning services for summer camps and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Do we normally do that? I don't recall that.
Well, and Tim, I don't know if we've done it in the past. It's not our normal. What the issue is, because of the openings that we have and looking at, fortunately, I mean, openings in positions, we have quite a few openings in custodial. And the good news is our camp calendar is really full this year, which we were thrilled about. But the challenge is now turning the buildings over, as the camps come and go. And so in order to meet those needs, we just don't have the current staff. So we were looking to do a contract for that temporary services to help us flip those if indeed that need takes place. So that's what that's for.
So will our existing staff be doing helping them, or will they just be doing other maintenance?
It'll depend on the volume of what we have going on, but there's more than enough for them to do, either directly involved in that or certainly with the rest of our buildings. So it's going to depend on the flow from week to week.
And will the cost of that be passed along to the camps? Is that how that works, or?
No, we don't have it set up as a separate piece, separate charge to the camps. We'll have to work with it within our budget.
So that'll be an existing, a new expense to us.
But that's because you don't have the new staff.
Because we don't have the staff now, yeah. Yeah, we hope it's not we don't want it to be a long-term solution, certainly.
Okay, I'd make a motion, we move it forward to the consent agenda.
Okay, any other questions? Next up then is the April committee meeting agenda topics.
Yes, sir. What we have so far, we'll be bringing forward the operating budget. We will be we'll be providing the investment report, the quarterly financials report, and also the board had asked at our last meeting for a review of our A&E solicitation process, and so we will have a presentation on that. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more, but that's what I've got right now.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Different topic. Bill, I want to say thank you to everyone involved and your staff who dealt with the student aid portion of the Trump administration's package, and that was passed in December for COVID relief. Students started receiving that money over the past few days. I know that was quite a bit of work on your guys' end, so I want to say thank you. I do have a quick question about that. With that package passed in December, are there similar time restrictions on spending the institutional money, similar to what we saw with the CARES package was passed last spring, but I recall having a board meeting specifically for spending that money. Are there those similar time restrictions?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's been very interesting because the rules kind of change as they go on with this. It's been very interesting. We have, and I'm probably going to be low. We have at least 15 right now different fund sources related to all the things from last March through last week practically. I think the number's probably higher than that. And there's a lot of different target dates for different things, right? So right now, and this could have changed in the time we've been sitting here. So right now, most of it we have at least until the end of this calendar year, and a lot of it even past that. Now we still have some funds related to the original HERF money from last year that does sunset in June, and we're prioritizing those, and so we want to make sure that we do hit those. So to answer your question, yeah, there's different there's different deadlines, but it seems like they're kind of starting to put those together, and they have extended some so that we don't run into a problem. It's certainly not as difficult as that original CARES amount that was due in December. So yeah, but we're constantly monitoring that and changing our priorities of which dollars to apply where to make sure that we meet all that.
I'm glad to hear you're monitoring it. And then
Yeah.
additionally, obviously the Biden relief package was passed in February.
Yeah.
Is it very similar to Trump's December package? Is there still the student aid portion?
Yeah.
Is that there's institutional aid as well?
Yeah, there is. Right now, again, we don't have all the final rules. We're kind of getting it daily. But right now, it looks like we will have about $21 million, which at this point, they're saying about half of it will go to students, similar to the student portion in the past. So again, it's a matter of making sure that we follow the rules correctly in case they change any of them. So we're pretty deliberate in what we're doing. I was really happy that we were able to get the round 2 out this week. And you're right, we did the ACH or direct deposit piece yesterday, and then the checks are going out today and probably tomorrow because there's so many of them. But so those will be arriving in the next several days to students. But so yeah, there's a big piece of it that's that. And again, we'll make sure that we follow the rules correctly. But they do change a little bit from depending on where, the timing of it. So yeah, but we're certainly working on that. My folks have just done a terrific job with that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and thanks for your diligent work on all that.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. They've really done a heck of a job.
Any other questions? Then that'll conclude our committee meeting. I want to thank Dr. Long and her committee, because without them and their long-windedness, we would have finished early. It is now 10:50. We are back on schedule. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the plenary session to order. And Dr. Long?
I move that pursuant to the Missouri Revised Statutes, Section 610-021, that the UCM Board of Governors meeting closed meeting with closed record and closed vote for the purpose of considering real estate matters, legal actions, contractual matters, personnel matters, and other matters included under Section 610-021 of the Missouri Revised Statutes.
Second?
Okay, roll call vote?
Governor Collier?
Yes.
Governor Governor Vanderan?
Yes.
Governor Abney?
Yes.
And Governor Long?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll move to closed session. Thank you all, and thanks to everyone that was attending virtually.